Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. We are here today for Standout 50 2025, The Judges Table. I came up with that title from, have you ever watched Top Chef or different shows where they have the Judges Table? So I'm here with Mr. Ged Cranny, who retired earlier this year from his role as senior consultant with Konica Minolta's international service business after a 45-year career in field service. And Roy Dockery, who is the Senior Director of Field Services Research at TSIA, as well as an author and a former service leader himself. These gentlemen served along myself and Maureen Azzato, who is the Portfolio Director for Field Service Events at WBR Research, who wasn't able to join us here today. But we are here in the UK for the announcement of this year's Standout 50. So gentlemen, thank you both for being with me.
Thank you for having us.
And taking part in the judging process. It wasn't an easy task that we had this year. And before we talk a bit about what we found in the nominations for this year, I want to start by just getting both of your thoughts on why it's so important to recognize the work of service leaders. Ged, can you start?
From my point of view, it's the engine of a lot of the businesses now. Sales has become commoditized. The service angle is where the customer's looking. It's a long-term relationship. And, we've become the farmers for the business. So the sales are going out as the hunters. They're getting the customer. And if we're going to have long-term relationships, it's that service department and it's that ever-changing, diverse sort of customer base that we're growing. And it's constantly changing. And the leaders that we have in service need to adapt, but they also need to be a storyteller and keep the people with them.
Mm-hmm. Good. Roy?
Yeah, and I would say, I think in most industries, right, there, regardless of what vertical you kind of fall into, there's always, kind of like Ged said, there's always a celebration of the sales culture, hitting a number, like achieving that goal. But I think being able to have something that actually recognizes leadership, right? A lot of organizations don't have leadership awards. They don't have variable compensation tied to leadership. So the people who are doing the job well, that's creating the service culture that actually drives the renewals and the expansion of existing accounts, I think it's great that with Future of Field Service, you kind of create a platform where people can be recognized and nominated, not just for hitting numbers or innovating or implementing AI, but the way that they do it. So I think recognizing the way that we achieve outcomes and the way that we drive culture within service organizations is critical, because I think that's what's going to help the industry maintain and just grow as we move forward. Because with more technology, there's going to become more needs for service. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, but leading the right way within that, I think is something that doesn't get recognized often. So I love the fact that Future of Field Service gives an opportunity for leaders to be recognized for that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I always hear people say service is a people business, right? And leadership is what empowers people. So to your point, we can't just focus on, what's the KPI, what's the goal, but how we build those relationships with teams, how we nurture talent, how we create that culture is super important. So in your opinions, Roy, I'll start with you. What makes for a standout leader?
I think for a standout leader, especially in today's kind of culture, right? Like everyone's favorite word is AI. I think what makes a leader stand out is that in interpersonal interactions, the way that they impact the people that they work with and the people that they lead, because in-person authenticity can't be faked, right? Like it's really easy now for us to get AI to rewrite an email for us to sound more empathetic, mm-hmm. or for an email to make us sound more clear, or so even some of our personality like glitches, mm-hmm. we can polish them over now with AI, but when you're meeting with somebody in person, so one thing that that I looked for in a lot of the nominations was the way that leaders felt, that made people feel inspired. Mm-hmm. Like, not only do I see the vision, but the way that you presented it, and like Ged said, the story that you told, it inspired me to actually want to follow you, right? Because we all work jobs, like you have to listen to your boss, But I think with leaders, people want to listen to you. And that normally comes down to how you make people feel at an individual level and not just about what you drive from like an overall organization or from a corporate perspective. So I think that's what stood out to me is the kind of business cases and innovation and execution that was presented. But the person writing it talked about how like the people felt and how it impacted the team, and then how those leaders were inspirational when it came to change or transformation or just the way that they ran their overall organizations.
Okay. Ged, when you think of a standout leader, what traits come to mind?
For me, it's being able to wear the many hats. Within service, we don't have enough representation at the C-level table. It's happening, but it's classed as that secondary thing to sales. And it's that leader who's able to put that hat on, fight in the C-level, in the boardroom, to be able to then transfer that back to his middle management, deliver that. But also, I go back to this storytelling. For me, my best days were when I rolled up my sleeves and I went and sat with the people, and they told me like some of my ideas were stupid and why they were stupid, and they would demonstrate to me, like, if we'd have done this left-hand turn or this right-hand turn, we could make the thing better. And what I got from a lot of the nominations was that the passion of the people who were writing about the authenticity of the leader didn't just say it to the C-level, came in and then described it in stories. And I picked that up a lot in a lot of the nominations. And that's what you want to be able to have. A great leader can walk in a room and not put the badge. It's just the person, and the people work for that person because they really, really believe in the vision, the passion, and the drive of that person, not just what the business is doing. People work for people.
Yeah. So you've both kind of touched on there's two real reasons that we introduced the Standout Awards. Ged, you said service leaders wear many hats. They juggle a lot. They have a lot of responsibility, a lot of need to prioritize. And I think that hard work is often under-recognized. So the first and foremost reason was, we really wanted to give those folks some much-deserved recognition. But the secondary fact, Ged, to your point, is service doesn't always get the recognition it deserves within the business, right? And it isn't always understood for the impact it can have on an organization to its full extent. So, that's what we have in mind while we're doing this. So, with that in mind, you both have been in service leadership roles. Could you share a time that you felt recognized or acknowledged for your own leadership and what impact it had on you? Roy, you can start.
I'll start. So the interesting thing is I'll talk about a time when I was recognized but didn't get the award. So I worked at a company and they had like, it was kind of like the CEO's kind of like leadership award. But the irony is it always went to a salesperson. So it wasn't, and in 1 year, I think we had a transformation, we did an integration. There was so much that I had accomplished that like everybody was like, you know what? No, like there's no way Roy's not getting the award. But the award went to one of our sales leaders who had hit numbers. His team did really well. And when he stepped down off the stage, he said, that should have been you. And he was like, without a doubt. And so moving forward, it was almost like they reclassified it as a sales award, because when it came to leadership, people recognized like to get all the stuff done that we get done in the service organization when when we have mergers, when you have to take on new products, when you got to outsource and do all the training, it was just interesting to me to actually be recognized by the person who was the top leader. And then the response of my team as well, because a lot of my leadership were at the meeting as well. And it was a weird moment for like almost everybody in the room to turn around and look and been like, no, you should have gotten that award. But it was it was supposed to be a sales award. They just had it named wrong, right? But to get that recognition from the team, I think was important. And so for me, it's always from the people that I serve. So the people that I work with, vertically, the C-suite that I always have to interact with. But for me, it's the feeling of, does my team think I'm a good leader? Like if I, like Ged said, if I go out and ride with a technician in the field, is there this anxiety like that the boss is coming to like check on me, or is it known that as a leader, like I like to get to know people. I want to see what you're experiencing at the ground level. And so that was always my kind of judge of my leadership, is that at the lowest level of the organization, like, does that person know that I care about them? And if they know that I care about them, then I'm doing fine. But then when I start hearing people in the field talk about corporate, then I'm like, then there's a disconnect for me, because to you, I should be corporate, right? Like I'm leading and representing you to the rest of the organization. And if any leadership decision is, if the story isn't being told where you don't feel seen, then that's a loss from a management perspective. So that's what I always listened out for, to make sure we didn't have that corporate versus us mentality, because I represented us to corporate. So like if they see something wrong with corporate, then that means I'm not delivering a story that's effective. But that's kind of what I see. I think is probably one of my favorite stories, because it's being recognized even by people who are outside of your organization, but more so the people who actually report to you, who rely on you every day to make decisions.
Yeah. Ged, what about you?
I think one of my proudest moments was I left the UK as lockdown happened. And the team that I left behind had some of the most complex problems anybody's ever dealt with. I started doing these webinars and workshops, talking to people in some really big companies, because everybody was scared. And I watched my team thrive. I watched my team deal with some unbelievable complex problems, and I watched them grow. They didn't shrink, they didn't go away from it. They had to deal with laying people off for the first time. Obviously it was on the government schemes, and we were bringing the people back. They dealt with that. They managed that, they grew as a team, and watching them, which I was lucky enough to do from head office, and knowing that actually the things we built over the years weren't just built on the fact that it was an autocratic state. It was actually a democratic state. The people had grown, the people were ready, and they were more than ready to take over. So that was, I have to say, my proudest moment. But from a sales point of view, I used to do the sales conference, and obviously got that sales and service jibe. So every time I would present near the end of the sales conference, and I had certain salesmen who I used to get to start the booing. So as I walked the stage, it was a bit of fun and a bit of banter, because it gets me to become more confident when I go on stage. But the new sales director took it wrong. And he jumped on the stage, pushed me out of the way, and he said, right, do you realise that you guys only get the first sale? He and his team get the next sales. They make more money than you do on all of your sales. So you make the first sale and your profitability. They've made that profitability in 2 years, and the next 3 years, they grow that profitability. Anyway, so learn from it. And I had to take him to one side at the end and say, look, it's a bit of fun between me and the salesman. It sort of settles me down going on the stage, and it gives me my first opening line. Anyway, but but somebody's got to recognise service, and it was nice to see that after all the years, they knew it mattered, and what their engineers did, and getting them to come and share with the engineers as well, which was good.
That's good. So, Roy, you mentioned, we're in the AI era, and there's a lot of different impacts of that. What I'm curious about is, when you think about how technology, including AI, will evolve over the next 5 years, do you think there will be a new standout trait? Will there be, something different that is demanded of leaders going forward?
I think one of the big things that's gonna happen, or that's kind of already in progress, right? We saw the digital transformation. We went from things being a lot more mechanical, electromechanical, to being network and IT based. And so I think the leaders who are going to be able to manage like the AI transformation, but not just for their technology, but for how they use their people. So, at TSIA, I get to consult with a lot of our members, and the great leaders that I see, right? There's some good leaders, but the great leaders that I see are already starting to factor in, okay, how is AI going to impact people's jobs? How is that going to change the distribution of my workforce? And then who on my workforce do I start training to be that AI empowered engineer versus the person that has to be more mechanical? So I think the foresight that we have to have, like our ability to kind of look into the future a little bit and say, okay, the skill set's going to change, but instead of allowing like the current workforce and your technicians to be displaced, it's to start training them properly now to say, okay, like you're going to be my AI guy, like I'm going to move you over to knowledge management. I'm going to put you over here to be my SME that's actually feeding articles to the AI. So I think it's that forethought, because the tribal knowledge that's being fed into these systems still has to be vetted so that things don't hallucinate. So I think the next thing is going to be, we're going to have like a talent migration that leaders are going to have to manage. And if you don't do it properly now and plan for it, you're going to have more people doing one job than you need to, but you're going to have new jobs that you could have developed them into. Yeah. So I think that's where and we saw this probably like in the IoT age, right? When we started doing more data analytics and all of that other stuff, and people were like, oh, we kind of ignored it. And then we had too many technicians, or we had technicians who were in the wrong places. So even things like that, like geographically, start saying, okay, we're going to have a boom in data center business. So let me start figuring out where the data centers are going and then creating opportunities for technicians to relocate. So the way that we manage the resources we have and look towards the future, I think is going to be most critical, because it's people. We're still going to need people at the end of the day, but I think the skill sets are going to change. So being able, the leaders who are forward thinking enough to start investing in their people now are the ones that will be most successful, because they already have your culture, they understand your technology, they understand your customer base. So if you only have to teach them like the AI edge, you already have 3 of the other 4, knocked out. But if they don't plan for it, you're going to need it, and you're not going to have time to train for it. So you're going to have to source it externally, and that's going to start cannibalizing your internal workforce.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts, Jed?
I think my big thing about AI is, somebody once said to me that if you invite AI into your business, you've invited a vampire into your house. It's got no empathy. It will just do what it does because it's logical. And it's bringing that, I go back to the storytelling, because for me, that's a leader's role, is to turn strategy into a story that everybody can relate to. And then that goes back into the training. And I'll go back to the analog to digital change. We had engineers who just went, I'm an analog engineer and I'm going to stay analog. And you're saying, had to go and have them discussions about, okay, you can be an analog engineer, but you've got like 7 years left. And it's being able to sit with the people and having them honest conversations, but then storytelling about what the future looks like. You've got to make what strategy looks like come real to an ordinary guy who's in the field, who wants to do his 9 to 5, go home, do his sports, do his different projects he has on a night outside of work, and feel secure. AI is going to bring insecurity. It's going to bring questions. It's already bringing benefits of, okay, I want to make my emails look great, so we'll tidy up my emails. But it's going to bring bigger things than that. It's going to bring faster thinking and more output. It's going to mean that the knowledge base has got to be better. So let's train people. Actually, knowledge in your head isn't valuable anymore. Being able to deliver knowledge that the system can use is the new fuel for the businesses. Right. And I think it's storytelling. And again, I'm a storyteller, so I have to say that. Yeah, and I like the point you made about empathy as well. Are there any other reflections on the process, your involvement judging this year's awards that you'd like to share?
I think for me, it was interesting to see like the level of excitement that the people who nominated folks, right? Like it's, and I know we talked about it in some of our reviews, like the energy that somebody wrote the nomination with, right? Or whether they came across this on their LinkedIn profile or they were following it since the Standout 50 last year. I think that always gives me encouragement that there are still people within organizations who recognize and who recognize a good leader, right? Because it's one of those things that's hard to put on paper what it is, but when you see it, you know what it is, right? And so, and it was even hard for some people because you could tell it was just hard for them to describe it.
Yeah.
Like they see it, they know they've got a good leader, but it's hard to put it into words. But I think just that excitement around people following somebody and almost seeing it as a privilege to work for somebody that they think is an effective leader when it comes to innovation and execution, but really on the authenticity side, because that was one of the things we were heavy on. So that, I think that to me is what stood out, is just that people had like a level of excitement and going into detail, and they were telling stories. So they were even leading in the way that they were telling a story to try to highlight the person that they nominated. And that's just, I just love to see that, right? Just recognition of leaders and people being able to articulate how they felt impacted by somebody's leadership style.
For me, it was the diversity of what people see service is now. So I think, when I started to look at the nominations, I expected to see a lot of like external business to customer, but actually there was a lot of internal customer. So i.e. people are now starting to see that the services are actually delivered within the business, which is nice to see because, it always has been, but we've always had that. It's about the pound, it's about the dollar. It's now it's about the person and it's about the people. So a lot of what came through and the real leaders who came out, and the judges all had the same thing in our discussions, was that, as you just said, that passion that the people had, that showed that the people who were delivering the leadership it wasn't just delivering the strategy, it wasn't just being the business and let's get the pound. It's about the different areas of service that came out. And I think we had a big discussion one afternoon about, is this service? Isn't this service? And we all went, well, yeah, because it's actually delivering the platform for people to excel somewhere else in the business for the customer. So yeah, that was for me, and it was exciting. And I have to be honest, it was super enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to read what people had to share, but to your points, the excitement and the passion behind that, it gives you, it was a privilege to have an inside look at how hard people are working to treat people well, like you said, not just for the pound or for the dollar or for the business outcomes, but because they also want to, build people up and create a good culture. It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so
it was good.
Thank you both, and thanks to Maureen as well for taking part in the process. I certainly couldn't have done it alone, and really appreciate you coming to make the big announcement with me today and sharing your thoughts. So thank you both.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
You can find more by visiting the home of the Unscripted podcast at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.